Welcome to Finding Comfort in Difficult Times, a selection of soldiers' Bibles. The story of the soldier's Bible is little known and rarely told. It started in 1643 when Oliver Cromwell distributed to his army a tiny pamphlet including some 125 biblical excerpts meant to provide encouragement and moral guidance to the troops. It entered a completely new phase in the early 1800s when the newly created Bible societies began sending to soldiers and sailors copies of the entire Bible or the New Testament. In the United States, the main provider of scriptures for the military always was and still is the American Bible Society. Its distribution figures rose consistently between 1817 and 2011, and features such as presidential messages, study guides, and reading plans were gradually added to the biblical text. This exhibition illustrates the evolution of soldiers' Bibles in America by bringing together the most significant scriptures produced by American publishers for American military personnel. While the American Bible Society did provide scriptures for the military before 1861, the scale increased during the Civil War. The Society adopted a policy that ensured that Bibles would be distributed to both sides of the conflict, but implementing the policy in the Confederate States proved more difficult than distributing scriptures in the states of the Union. More than 3 million copies of the Bible and the New Testament were provided during the war, and only 1/10 of them reached the South. Like the other editions from 1862 displayed nearby, this New Testament was signed by its owner, Thomas Finley Ramsey. The book and a tintype photograph of Ramsey in his uniform were presented to the American Bible Society in October 1953 by a member of his family. Ramsey died on April 8, 1864, at the age of 20. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, photography in the United States was just coming of age. Well-known documentary photographers such as Matthew Brady took hundreds of images of battlefields and campsites and presented to the public for the first time a realistic look at the tragedy of war. The most common form of photography during the Civil War, however, was individual portraits of soldiers like the one shown here. Taken by traveling camp photographers, these one-of-a-kind images were made on metal or glass. The metal images, like this one, are called tintypes. This is a photographic process in which a positive image is created on a thin sheet of iron that has been primed with a light-sensitive material. Relative to its predecessor, the daguerreotype, tintypes were printed only minutes after the photographer snapped the portrait. The process was inexpensive, portable, and quick. This allowed for countless soldiers to send a photographic keepsake to their loved ones or tuck a likeness of themselves in a pocket or Bible. Neither the American Bible Society nor the short-lived Southern Bible Societies based in Nashville and Atlanta could satisfy the Confederate Army's need for scriptures. The only other option left to the South was to try to obtain scriptures from England. In 1862, the Confederate Bible Society purchased on credit 92 cases of scriptures to be delivered in Bahamas. Blockade runners were to transport these scriptures to Charleston, and nearly half of them were lost during that part of the journey. Only 48 cases reached their final destination. The New Testament on display here was printed by Oxford University Press for the British and Foreign Bible Society, and is one of the copies that was shipped to the Confederacy but failed to reach its destination. The first soldier's Bible ever published in English was issued in 1643 for the use of Oliver Cromwell's army. It consisted of some 125 biblical passages of various length, grouped under headings such as "A soldier must not do wickedly," or "A soldier must love his enemies as they are his enemies, and hate them as they are God's enemies." The compilation was aimed at providing guidelines for the soldier's conduct and comfort in case of adversity or defeat. This edition was released in 1898 in connection with the Spanish-American War. It has an identification page and an original preface. A second edition of the 1898 pamphlet was published in 1917 and includes a facsimile of a short message penned by Theodore Roosevelt, that reads, "This is worth reading, comrade and friend." Officially, the Spanish-American War lasted for almost 8 months, from April 25, 1898, when the United States declared war on Spain, to the signing of the Treaty of Paris on December 10th. The actual fighting was over in about 10 weeks. The American Bible Society sent to the front almost 75,000 scriptures, including some specially printed Spanish New Testaments for the prisoners of war. The distribution was handled by the Young Men's Christian Association, also known as the YMCA, and the Navy chaplains. This pocket-sized New Testament was one of the most popular Army and Navy editions during World War I. 1,292,000 copies had already been printed when this one was released. As inscribed on its presentation page, this New Testament was given by the American Bible Society to Harry A. Knopf, a resident of Albany, New York, who was enlisted in Company F of the 2nd Pioneer Infantry Regiment. A well-worn copy of the 1917 Old Testament is displayed nearby. Chamberlain Bounds of Abilene, Texas, a member of the Marine Corps, carried this book from home to the fields of Flanders. At the end of the book, Bounds wrote the address of a young lady from Orléans, France. A card inserted in the book talks about the comfort he had found in the New Testament. "Dear Jane, no friend will miss you more than I will, and none grieve more at thy departure. In parting, I give you this little soiled testament which has been my greatest strength and comfort. Friends may fail you here, loved ones may depart, and we seem sorely pressed, but in this book we find a friend who cannot fail and gives life eternal." 250,000 Jewish soldiers and sailors served in the American Armed Forces during World War I and represented 5% of the total Jewish population of the United States. This was well above the general rate of participation, which estimated at 3%. To meet the spiritual needs of the Jewish service personnel and provide counseling and comfort, the Jewish Welfare Board created in 1917 a chaplains committee that has continued to function under slightly different names ever since. This collection of excerpts from the Hebrew Bible was issued by the Jewish Publication Society at the request of the Jewish military chaplains. The texts are taken from an original translation first published by the same society in 1917. During World War II, the National Jewish Board of Welfare reprinted this booklet more than 9 times and distributed about 250,000 copies among Jewish soldiers.